All right, so get ready because we're diving deep today
Deep.
into a story that's got more layers than a stadium full of LSU fans.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about the appearance of a live tiger,
Mm-hmm.
Omar Bradley, at a recent LSU football game.
Okay.
And, you know, the sources that you've shared with me paint a fascinating picture.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, it's a pretty troubling one, too.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a real-life mystery novel where we're trying to figure out, you know, who paid for this tiger to be there
Yeah.
and what it all means for the future of LSU's mascot tradition.
Well, I think one of the most fascinating things about this story is that it highlights how views on animal welfare are changing, especially when it comes to using wild animals for entertainment.
Yeah, okay, so before we get into all the details about Omar Bradley, can you give me like a quick recap of LSU's history with live tiger mascots?
Yeah.
I know they've got a long tradition.
Yeah, they do.
But I'm honestly a little fuzzy on the details.
Well, so LSU's live tiger mascots, all named Mike the Tiger, have been a huge part of their identity for decades.
Right.
But over time, you know, concerns about the tiger's well-being and the ethics of keeping them in a stadium environment just grew louder and louder.
Right. I mean, times change.
Yeah.
And, you know, what might have been considered acceptable decades ago might raise some eyebrows today.
Exactly. And those concerns eventually led to LSU discontinuing the tradition of bringing Mike to games back in 2015.
Okay.
Although it is worth noting that LSU still houses a live tiger. Mike the Seven in a 15,000 square foot habitat on campus.
So they still have a live mascot.
Yeah.
But they're not parading him around the stadium anymore.
Exactly.
And that's why this Omar Bradley situation is so interesting. It seems like a step back in time.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are wondering if it signals a return to those old ways.
I think so.
Especially since it was Governor Landry who pushed for Omar Bradley's appearance. Right. I mean, he's been pretty vocal.
Yes, he has.
About wanting to revive the live tiger tradition at games.
Absolutely. And his reasoning is really fascinating.
Okay.
He frames the whole thing as honoring tradition and respecting LSU's past.
Okay.
He's even gone so far as to dismiss critics as woke.
Wow.
And compare their reaction to the way former President Trump was treated.
That's some preloaded language.
It is.
It sounds like this has become a bit of a political football.
It really has.
But let's try to focus on Omar Bradley himself for a moment.
Okay.
What exactly happened at the game?
Sure.
And why did it spark so much controversy?
Well, so Omar Bradley was brought in from Florida.
Okay.
Specifically for the LSU versus Alabama game. He made a brief appearance on the sidelines in what used to be Mike the Tiger's old cage. And that's when the outcry really began.
Okay.
Animal welfare organizations, especially PETA, condemned the whole thing, arguing that it was cruel and exploitative to use a wild animal for entertainment, especially in a loud and chaotic environment like a football stadium.
Yeah, I can definitely see their point.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine a tiger feeling comfortable in that setting,
Right.
no matter how much training it's had.
And the controversy actually goes even deeper than that.
Okay.
There are serious concerns about Omar Bradley's owner, a man named Mitchell Kalmanson.
Okay.
It turns out he's had a long history of run-ins with the USDA
Really?
for improper animal care.
Wait, seriously, what kind of improper care are we talking about?
We're talking inadequate feeding,
Whoa.
unsanitary conditions, and even 2 instances where tigers under his care escaped.
What? During circus performances?
Yikes. Tigers escaping.
Yeah.
That's not exactly confidence-inspiring.
No, it's not?
It sounds like this guy's got a pretty questionable track record when it comes to animal welfare.
To say the least.
And that's why animal rights groups are so concerned.
They argue that bringing Omar Bradley to the game put him at risk.
Yeah.
Both physically and psychologically.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got a governor pushing for a return to a controversial tradition.
Right.
A tiger with a potentially shady owner and animal welfare groups sounding the alarm.
Yeah.
This is getting messy.
It is.
But before we even get into the ethical debate here, I'm curious about the legal side of things.
Sure.
Was it even legal to bring Omar Bradley to the game in the first place?
Well, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. So Louisiana has a general ban on owning and importing big cats. but there are exemptions for universities and traveling exhibitors.
So LSU is allowed to have Mike the Ethant on campus?
Yes.
But what about Omar Bradley? He was brought in from out of state.
Yes, he was.
Right.
And that's where those exemptions for traveling exhibitors come in.
Okay.
The Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries confirmed that those exemptions do exist. But here's the thing. They don't actually have any permits on file.
What?
For Kalmanson specifically.
Hold on. So they're saying it's okay for traveling exhibitors to bring in big cats.
Generally, yeah.
But they don't have any record of this specific exhibitor being permitted. That sounds like a loophole big enough to drive a tiger through.
Yeah, it does raise some questions. And it gets even more complicated when you consider the Big Cat Public Safety Act.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah.
Can you give me a quick rundown of what that's all about?
Sure.
I'm not super familiar with the details.
So basically, the act aims to phase out private ownership of big cats and limit their use in public exhibitions like circuses and roadside zoos. It's been gaining some traction in Congress. And if it passes, it could have a major impact on situations like this one.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like there's a growing recognition that keeping these animals in captivity for entertainment purposes just isn't ethical.
Right. And those concerns about Omar Bradley's well-being are really at the heart of this whole controversy. Animal welfare advocates argue that transporting a tiger long distances and then exposing it to the noise and chaos of a football game is inherently stressful and potentially harmful.
You know, I keep thinking about those videos you see of tigers pacing back and forth in their cages at zoos. It's heartbreaking.
It is.
They're obviously not meant to live in such confined spaces.
Exactly. They're wild animals with complex needs, and their natural instincts just can't be fully met in captivity.
Yeah, and that's why groups like PETA were so quick to condemn Omar Bradley's appearance at the LSU game.
Yes.
They argue that it sends the wrong message.
It does.
You know, normalizing the exploitation of wild animals for entertainment.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got these ethical concerns. We've got the potential legal gray areas. And now this Big Cat Public Safety Act looming in the background. It sounds like traditions involving live animals are facing more scrutiny than ever before.
Absolutely. And this whole situation with Omar Bradley has really ignited the debate about whether those traditions can or even should continue in a society that's increasingly concerned about animal welfare.
Yeah, it's almost like this one incident has become a microcosm of this larger cultural shift.
Exactly. And it's fascinating to see how Governor Landry's response fits into that larger narrative. You know, by framing his push to bring back the live tiger tradition as a defense against woke culture. He's tapping into a very specific segment of the population and their anxieties about changing social norms.
I see what you mean. It's like he's trying to position this as a battle between those who want to cling to the past and those who are pushing for progress.
Yes.
And in a way, Omar Bradley becomes a symbol in that fight.
Absolutely. It's a brilliant, it's somewhat cynical political strategy. You know, by aligning himself with a beloved LSU tradition, he's able to tap into a deep well of emotional attachment and nostalgia.
It makes you wonder if we're going to see more of these clashes.
I think so.
Between tradition and changing values. Not just in sports, but in other areas of society as well.
Absolutely. And the outcome of those clashes will depend on how willing we are to have those tough conversations. You know, listen to different perspectives and reevaluate long-held beliefs.
Speaking of tough conversations. I can't believe we haven't even touched on the elephant in the room yet. Or rather, the tiger in the room. Who actually paid for Omar Bradley's appearance at the game.
Yes, the mystery of the missing funding. Governor Landry's office has been adamant that no state or LSU funds were used to bring Omar Bradley to the game. But they've refused to disclose who actually footed the bill.
That's strange, right? I mean, wouldn't you want to be transparent about something like that?
Well, you would think.
Especially with all the controversy swirling around it.
You'd think so.
What are they trying to hide?
It's certainly curious. And it leads to all sorts of speculation. Some people believe it was a wealthy booster trying to curry favor with the governor. While others suspect a private interest group with a stake in keeping the live tiger tradition alive.
So we've got a potential ethical breach. a legal gray area, a brewing political storm, and now a shadowy financial backer.
Right.
This is getting more intriguing by the minute.
It really is a fascinating case study in the complex interplay of tradition, animal welfare, politics, and even a touch of mystery.
Yeah. I have to admit, this deep dive has really opened my eyes to the complexities of this issue.
It is complex.
I came into this thinking it was a simple story.
Right.
About a tiger at a football game.
Yeah.
But it's so much bigger than that.
It really is. It speaks to these larger cultural trends and forces that are shaping our world.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
But before we get too carried away with the big picture, let's not forget about the human cost of all this.
Yeah, that's important.
There was that disturbing incident with the LSU student who was arrested for making threats against Governor Landry on social media.
You're right. We can't overlook that.
It's a stark reminder of how deeply this issue has divided people.
It is.
And how emotions can escalate to a dangerous level.
Absolutely. It underscores the need for respectful dialogue and a willingness to listen to opposing viewpoints, even when we disagree passionately.
Well said. Okay, so we got a lot to unpack here.
We do.
But before we dive into those final thoughts, let's take a moment to let all of this sink in.
Sounds good.
Back in a flash.
If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting this channel by hitting the subscribe and like buttons. This will help the channel grow and expand on the journey we have begun together here at AI Meets You.
Okay, we are back and ready to kind of wrap up this deep dive into this whole Omar Bradley controversy.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have to say, this has been one of the most thought-provoking deep dives we've done yet.
Yeah, I agree.
It feels like we've uncovered this whole network of interconnected issues from, you know, animal welfare and tradition to politics and even the power of nostalgia.
Absolutely. It really highlights how these seemingly isolated events can connect to much larger cultural and societal trends.
Exactly.
And it forces us to confront, you know, some uncomfortable questions about the choices we make and the values that we prioritize.
You know, one thing that keeps coming back to me is that image of the tiger pacing in a cage.
Right.
It just feels so wrong, you know?
It does.
Like, these animals are not meant to live like that.
It's a powerful image, and it really speaks to the heart of the ethical debate surrounding the use of wild animals for entertainment.
So let's talk about that ethical debate.
Okay.
We've heard from animal welfare groups who argue that using a tiger in this way is inherently cruel and exploitative.
Absolutely.
But we also have to acknowledge that there's a strong tradition behind it.
Yes, we do.
And a lot of people feel very passionately about upholding that tradition.
Right, and that's where things get really tricky.
Yeah.
How do you balance those competing values? How do you reconcile tradition with evolving ethical standards, especially when those standards are challenging, you know, deeply ingrained beliefs?
Yeah, I don't think there are any easy answers.
No, I don't either.
But I do think this whole Omar Bradley situation has forced a lot of people to really think about where they stand on this issue.
Absolutely. And it's sparked a conversation that needs to happen. You know, we can't just sweep these uncomfortable questions under the rug. We need to engage with them thoughtfully and honestly, even if it leads to some difficult choices.
So where do we go from here? What are some potential paths forward?
Well, I think one option is to simply accept that certain traditions have run their course.
Okay.
Maybe it's time to acknowledge that using live wild animals for entertainment is no longer acceptable, regardless of how deeply rooted that tradition may be.
I can see that, but I imagine there would be a lot of pushback.
Oh, there would be.
From people who feel strongly about preserving those traditions.
Absolutely. And that's why another option is to look for ways to reimagine those traditions.
Okay.
To find ways to honor the symbolism and the history without actually putting animals at risk.
Like, instead of bringing a live tiger to a football game, maybe LSU could create some sort of amazing holographic tiger who runs around the field.
Right. Or they could focus on educating fans about tigers in the wild and supporting conservation efforts. You know, there are creative solutions out there. It's just a matter of being open to them.
I like that it's about finding a way to evolve the tradition while still respecting its essence.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that traditions aren't static. They change and adapt over time, just like our understanding of the world around us.
So what do you think? Is it possible to uphold traditions like LSU's live tiger mascot while also being truly committed to animal welfare?
That is a tough question.
Yeah.
And I think the answer will ultimately depend on the willingness of individuals and institutions to prioritize animal well-being, even when it means challenging long-held beliefs and practices.
Well said.
Yeah.
I think this deep dive has left us with a lot more questions than answers.
It has.
But maybe that's the point.
Maybe so.
Maybe it's not about finding definitive solutions, but about engaging in these complex conversations.
Yeah.
And grappling with the ethical dilemmas they present.
I think you're right. Sometimes the most valuable deep dives are the ones that leave us with more to think about.
So for our listener out there, we leave you with this.
Okay.
What traditions do you hold dear? And how do those traditions intersect with your values and your understanding of the world?
Good question.
It's a question worth pondering.
It is.
Especially in a time when our values and our world are changing so rapidly.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yes, thank you.
And until next time,
keep
exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deeper.
If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting this channel by hitting the subscribe and like buttons. This will help the channel grow and expand on the journey we have begun together here at AI Meets You.